Hey everybody, it's Craig here, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the Arduino and the SAMrI and the Atmel chip handle analog outputs. Analog outputs gives us a range of control between hardly turned on at all to fully turned on. And if you remember this chip right here, we used PB1 and PB2, port B, number 1 and 2, to control the right motor and to control the left motor. These same pins are also called pin 10 and pin 9 in the Arduino code if you're using Arduino Uno or something, but we like to call them PB1 and PB2 because that's really what they are. Now I've made a little bit of a sketch right here, very simple sketch. I start off by including SAMrI.h, and then I set up the right motor and left motor to right enable at PB2 and the left enable at PB1. Now I've even hooked up an LED to the right enable to PB2 from there to ground so you can actually see the brightness. We make a variable called speed, make it an integer, and we set it to 100 to initialize it. We set all of the pins of the motor control to be outputs over here, which is cool. And we have a little 1-second delay before the program starts. And here's the main program. Now look what I've done. I've made a full speed 200. It'll go to 250 to a 55. But full speed of about 200 and enabled forward function for 2 seconds. And then I made the speed 75 for 2 more seconds, and then 25 for 2 more seconds so you can see how it behaves. I've downloaded it into this little robot right here, and there's the LED that I've got hooked up to the motor enable. So let's turn it on and see the speeds. There's 200, there's 75, and there's 25. 200, 75, 25. Now look at the LED that controls that's hooked up to the motor enable. It's dimmer and very dim. Very bright, sort of bright, and there's 25 very dim. So that shows you just how you can actually control lamps too if you want to control the brightness of an output. But this is an oscilloscope hooked up to the same enable. And I want you to notice here on this oscilloscope that it's not really going between 0 and 5 volts. It's in an analog fashion, like 4 volts and 2 volts and 1 volt. It's actually switching very quickly between 5 volts at the top and 0 volts at the bottom. So you see 200, which is here, is mostly on. 75 is a little bit on, and 25 is barely on. That's 200, 75, and 25. Now, I don't really recommend you run your motors at 200. That puts a large strain on these little 3-volt motors. We do have 9 volts on our battery, and we don't like to dump 100% of that all the time to your motors. You can for short periods of time, but you're going to start smelling the ozone, and those motors are going to start complaining if you do it a lot. 100 is pretty good, so I like to call it 100 as being a suggested maximum for the motors for the long term. But in an emergency, you can bump it up if you need to. Anyways, if you have any questions about those analog outputs or this little bit of code, please contact me. Keep building, everybody.